Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How we doing? We're going to get right into it with the Senior Bowl Day 3 commencing today, practice and things like that. I'm going to have to catch up, give you some Day 1 practice reports from actually Day 2 as far as the actual day of practice. For the week, Day 1 was typical, measurements, things like that. Teams getting affiliated, doing their meetings and things like that. So one player that I was definitely going to highlight today for our player number 3 highlight, man. It's a player that I really talked about a lot into the preseason lead up into the 2025 year. Guy that I'm a lot higher on than the consensus, man. I've said it throughout the year. I've said it, pretty much as the year's going on. I mean, I think I have him graded a lot higher than I think most people do, but I think his standout from Day 1, I gotta mention him. It's just funny that I was going to mention him today anyway. He was my third guy that I wanted to talk about specifically because of the positional need for the Commanders as we do it. But I'm a big Derrick Moore fan for University of Michigan, man. This kid can play. He's a stud. Everything he does from a pass rush standpoint, he's that guy, man. Teams try to. They really do try to do everything they can. They bootleg, things like that. They try to keep the ball away from this guy, man. He's a relentless player. He's strong, physical, really good bend. Can make tackles for loss in the run game, man. When the ball goes his way, he's good at setting the edge. Does he need some work in the running game? Does he need to maybe add a little bit of a dimension to play strength? Yes, but I mean, as you just see on the highlight playing behind me, man, the guy can stun. He's super effective, man. He's relentless. He hits like a truck. He's just a player that I really like. And the reason I'm bringing up Derrick Moore, the reason I kind of saved it for this day was because I knew I was going to be going over the Day 1 practice reports. As far as the on-field workouts, man, and the highlight always is defense early and things like that, man. So I knew I was going to talk a lot about Derrick Moore today, and then he ended up blowing it up. So from yesterday's practice, I'm sure we'll hear more about him today. I mean, when you look at the D-line players that are here, man, I mean, we've talked about them over the course of the year as I was doing my college football, week in, week out, games that I was highlighting, players that I was highlighting to see, and then the progress reports from the games. I mean, Dominique Orange, the Iowa State defensive tackle. Then you got Lee Hunter, the Texas Tech defensive tackle, who is going to be a Day 1 pick. Romello Height, Texas Tech edge, man. This guy is going to be a really good player in the NFL, man. He's a stud. And then Derrick Moore, he's right around that Romello Height area for me. In most consensus mock drafts, I think Romello Height's a second round player, maybe late first. I think he's a guy that is a first round player. I have Derrick Moore in that range as far as what I see on tape. I mean, even if he is just a situational pass rusher down the road, whatever, man. I mean, this guy can get after the quarterback. I mean, Derrick Moore has 10 to 12 sack a year, consistency as far as what I see from just a pass rushing standpoint. So if that guy can actually be a 3-down player and impact the run game, and he's on the field that much, and he's getting pressures on early downs and things like that on the quarterback when teams are throwing the ball on first and second down and things, the sky's the limit, really, for Derrick Moore, man. But, I mean, just the players that are on, Zion Young, the edge rusher from Missouri, 6'6". I mean, big physical guy, man. I've said it all year. This is the reason I'm highlighting the defensive ends, because the one-on-one drills, defensive ends feasted. T.J. Parker, you got Logan Fonu from Utah, things like that. Trust me, man. There is no shortage, man. If you're looking for defensive help up front in this draft, early and often, you're going to find it. First, second, third, fourth, fifth round. I mean, honestly, these guys you're going to get to a point in the draft where these guys are exceeding the production for the round that they're drafted. They're probably going to play a lot earlier than some people expect if they get into the right scheme and the right fit, and that's always the most important thing. That's the thing that always comes up. A couple other players that I'm really high on that are, starting to make an impact from the Day 1 reports. Aaron Anderson, the LSU wide receiver, a little bit small, 5'9". You just see him out there routing guys up. This guy is like that. You got the John Carroll University wide receiver. I'd have to actually find that because I'm not going to have his name right offhand. Too many names. Anyway, John Carroll University wide receiver, routing guys up, man, very effective. Georgia State wide receiver, big physical. Ted Hurst, big physical guy, gets a lot of yards, can really separate at the top of his route for a guy that's his size, can go up and get it. Physical, 50-50 ball, has a lot of juice. Guy that I really like. the Notre Dame Malachi Fields. He's a guy that's going to stand out in this type of setting. Jacoby Lane, I think he's going to take him a little bit of time. He needs to add a little bit more physical element. The consistency has always been kind of the thing with him, is he can go up and make the highlight. He can go up and make the play. Needs to be a little bit more physical, kind of work on his route definitions and things like that. Maybe where to chop it off a step early, things like that. Kind of breaks things down and makes things a little bit too noticeable. But that's something that's going to come with time, and I expect Jacoby Thomas to find his way with things like that. But again, the defense, generally wins when it comes to the trenches early on in the one-on-one drills. Then the offensive linemen start to figure out their techniques, things like that. Well, it's the opposite with wide receivers and corners. Wide receivers generally come out there day one, they shine, they're routing guys up, they're crisscrossing because they've never gone up against these guys before. Well, as day 3 gets here and things like that, day 4, as the day starts stacking and you get into the game, these cornerbacks are going to have a much better feel for what they're seeing from these guys because they've been watching them all week and how they routed up other guys and how they, stem up their routes and how they break into them and how they, use their body language and things like that. And then also, are they telling, the catch point by putting their hands up earlier? Are they able to get their hands up at the last second as the ball's getting there, not open their eyes real wide to the play that's going on in front of them? Again, so that's why the wide receivers tend to have, earlier, success on day 1, day 2. The cornerbacks start to figure them out. Same thing with the offensive line. I mean, there's some really good offensive linemen here. I mean, we get starting to, go to Texas A&M. That dude is a massive human. Trey Zune the third. He's a guy that I like. He's a guy that I liked all year at Texas A&M. I mean, honestly, crown over. That's the stud. I mean, that's the stud from Texas A&M. I mean, honestly, he's a guy that I would love to have on this team. I just don't think we're going offensive tackle with Josh Carley and Laramie Tunsil here, but 2 guys that I would keep my eye on if my team was in need of offensive tackle help. Man, Crownover is definitely a guy that I would really, really put on my priority list. He's going to be a stud. He's going to make himself some money this week. He's just a big athletic guy. You can talk about heavy feet. He might not be the most agile guy, but he's so big. He's really hard to get around, man. And we've seen these big, gaping 6'8" type humans, man, that, explosive DNs, they just get engulfed by him and they can't get around him because they just take up so much room and they play with such good length. They know how to play with leverage. They get down and their hips are really good. Maybe they don't have the lightest feet. Maybe they're not the most agile of foot, but because they're so big, they're so massive, they have such good length and such good play strength and things like that. Then when you watch them in the run game and they're so physical and dominant, getting out in front of these blocks and things like that, there's a world where these guys shine, and that's why I expect when the offensive line gets into a day 3, day 4, we start to see these guys really, kind of level the playing field. Because trust me, when you're going up against, Danny Dennis Sutton, if Akeem Mazador was here, this was a platform that I felt like he would shine at. LT Overton and his power and things like that. I mean, if you're looking for any type of weakness in anybody's game, you're going to find it here this week. I mean, you're talking about guys, like Zion Young, explosive off the edge with really, really elite length. Then you talk about Dante Moore, who has really, really good, speed to power, very, very, low center of gravity, 6'3", knows how to use it, can get underneath these offensive tackles and drive them back, can use power, and he has the burst off the edge to play with speed. You're gonna find the weaknesses in these guys' game because, like I said, man, you're gonna have LT Overton who plays with power. He wins with power, things like that. Then you're gonna have, like I said, you're gonna have the Derrick Moore coming off the edge with extreme burst and can get into it with burst or hit you up with a spin move or things like that. He's got a really refined pass rushing arsenal. And then again, David Bailey, Texas Tech, man, this dude is a stud. We all know he's a day 1 player. He's going to shine in a setting like this. Romello Height, once I think he gets it dialed in a little bit, once he sees how these offensive tackles are kind of getting into him with his length, he'll start to separate himself and probably have himself a really good game. I'll probably get more into the linebackers and the DBs and things like that tomorrow because I expect them to start to catch up. So I did Ephesians Prysock, early in the week. That was my day 1 highlight and things like that just because he's a player that I really, really like. I mean, the other UW cornerback, Takario Davis, he's a really, really good player in his own right. But I mean, there's really good players here. Whether it's Chris Johnson, San Diego State, this is a guy that's going to make himself some money in this week, coming from San Diego State, who's not a smaller school program, playing up to these guys that play at LSU and covering guys like Aaron Anderson and things like that. If you're able to hold your own against guys like that, you're going to be able to match up against guys that are going to be playing in the NFL, because these guys, maybe they might not be the all-pro whatevers when they get into the NFL, but they have some kind of skill set. That's the reason why they're here. NFL scouts want to, and talent evaluators, teams, they want to see certain guys in this atmosphere. They want to see who rises to the top, because they have certain traits that really, they want to see it matched up against certain other type of abilities. That's why I have mentioned Ephesians Price Hawk. I really want to see what he does against an Aaron Anderson, a 5'9" guy, when he's, down low onto him, starting in the press, not in off zone, things like that. How is he going to handle things like that with that quick twitch athlete who can get in and gain separation at any point in and out of his break, at any point, whether it's an early break coming off the line, separating just with a move or something like that, not having to be physical. Can you get your hands on that guy and stop him early and things like that? That's what I was looking to see. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm not going to get much into the Commanders base of my pod this week. I've kind of done that already, because we already made some hires and things like that. I'm not going to get into the Deron Payne thing. I got all off season for that. It's already maddening in my mind anyway. But I mean, it is what it is. Being a Commanders fan with the fan base that we have, sometimes it's just, we would rather get really good players and keep bad players. It's just what we do. It's the loser mentality that we've built under Dan Snyder. If we're paying a player, then if he's not an All-Pro, then he can't stay here. So we got to cut him, and then we got another hole in our team, and it's just what we love to do as fans. But again, like I said, I'm not really going to go down that rabbit hole. But again, man, safety play. Jalen Kilgore, he's a guy that I want to see. Like I said, I'm going to get into the back end guys a little bit later, because I think it's going to take them a few days to catch up. Same with the offensive line. I'm going to highlight more offensive line and more back end play, later on in the week as we start to get the practice reports, because you're going to start to see the guys who are picking it up. You saw Aaron Anderson come out day 1. He might get you on day 2. Day 3, you're starting to lock his ass up, because you figured out the nuances of his route concepts and the way that he works certain things and certain patterns, onto a mid to intermediate route, setting you up into a intermediate look, going deep. Cornerbacks will figure it out. Same thing with the offensive line. Right now, defensive line is going to shine. These offensive linemen are going to start rising to the top, because they're going to figure out how these guys are attacking them and things like that. Derrick Moore was a guy who shined on day 1, was something I really expected. Lee Hunter, same thing. TJ Parker, he was a guy that I really didn't have any questions about. He's just steady Eddie at Clemson. We wanted to see him, elevate his game to that top 5 draft pick, type, threshold. Didn't necessarily happen, but honestly, anybody that went to Clemson this year, nobody really elevated their draft stock as far as the way that the team performed. But at the end of the day, these individual players, they're going to get to teams in the NFL, and they're going to be playing beside NFL players, man. They're going to do a much better job, and they're going to have a complete roster beside them, man. There is no college is a job. They get paid now. But there's a different level, man, when it's the NFL. The NFL, everybody trains like it's their job, because it really is their job, and it ain't for long. And, so, again, thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip Pod. Derrick Moore was the guy that I really wanted to highlight, because, like I said, I wanted to talk about these D-line. This defensive draft is just loaded. We're going to get more into the back end and probably the linebackers tomorrow. Like I said, we'll start getting into the offensive linemen more and more as the week goes on for the Senior Bowl, and then Sunday. We're going to see, or Saturday, we're going to see how it is in the Senior Bowl, and we're going to enjoy that, and I'll get them reports to you. And then, it's going to be off to the combine and things like that, man. It's going to be a lot of scouting stuff coming at you, a lot of prospects, a lot of names. The names that I stick with early season is because I saw something in the off season as I was getting ready for my year, going back and watching the 2024 tape. Before the season started. That's why I was naming certain guys going into the season. A lot of them guys didn't fall off my list, because a lot of them guys still showed all the skill sets and the ascension that I needed to see from the individual player, regardless of team success, which is what makes it so hard as a scout, man. Like, realistically, man, when a team is doing bad, it does actually sometimes make it easier as a scout, because you start to see a team that's, got 3 or 4, they started accumulating 3 or 4 losses. They're kind of out of the playoff hunt. Is the player still giving his max effort? Derrick Moore was the type type of guy that still plays. He plays with the relentless motor. He's a guy that I like, which is why I've highlighted him for day 3, and we're going to continue to see him. I'm sure he's going to make a name for himself in the Senior Bowl. Probably make himself a little bit of money as far as from where the media has him to where NFL teams have him to. He's going to get his name called a lot earlier than anybody was probably talking about in the mock drafts and things like that. During the course of the year and things like that people just weren't watching the tape. Kind of attributing it to, okay, Michigan's out of it. I'm not watching them as much. This guy didn't perform the way that I expected him to in this game. Well, I'm not watching them again. And a lot of people get lost in in things like that when they're associating their scouting with team success. It's you got to find the individual, what they're doing. You're scouting the individual. Football is a team game. Individual skill sets win. That's how you find great players in the 3rd, the 2nd, the 5th round, things like that, man. That's how you do your scouting, and it's my favorite thing to do personally. But again, man, I really, really appreciate you guys checking out the Blue Chip Podcast. Just your host, Cody Potter. Again, enjoy the week. Hopefully you guys are staying up on the Senior Bowl, and again, we'll continue to talk about it here. Peace.